Welcome to A Dram of Outlander. This is Desiree, your podcaster and the writer for adramofoutlander.com for all things Outlander, from the Diana Gabaldon book series to the Starz TV series and everything in between. This is episode 98. Countdown to Outlander Season 3, Part 2. Well, hello there. I know I packed a big overview in last podcast covering about 25 chapters in just over an hour. I'm going to try to do about the same today. And then next week we will wrap up. And after that, Season 3 premieres! It's so exciting. I can't even stand it. All things are looking up for Season 3. Everything that we can tell, it's going to be fantastic. And book fans as well as show fans will be very happy with it. So we left off last podcast with Jamie coming back to finding an unusual exciseman dead by gunshot wound by Willoughby. And Claire was trying to take care of this man, and she was covered in blood in the borrowed shift she was wearing. And so now they have to dispose of the body. And when they look closer at this man, he doesn't have a warrant on him. And he also has a copy of the New Testament in his pocket, and it says A. Malcolm. So it looks like Jamie's alter egos are starting to converge, and that's terribly scary because he's the respectable A. Malcolm printer and also the smuggler Jamie Roy. So somebody is connecting the dots and they don't know who. So the body was disposed. It was actually put in a cask of creme de menthe. And that's something to keep your eye out for later. It may come back. And it's shipped out with a bunch of other casks. And why creme de menthe was chosen is because it's something that's not drunk very often. So it's unlikely that sailors on a ship would break into that cask and find a rotting body inside of it. Jamie and Claire decided to go have a bit of peace after leaving Fergus with the rest of the job of getting rid of the body. And they head over to Mowbray's. It's one of Edinburgh's best eating establishments. And they're having this lunch and they're talking to each other lovey-dovey and sort of sexy and getting the eyebrows up, and they can tell people are listening to them in this restaurant, but they don't really care. But they are interrupted by Sir Percival Turner. He's a local official, and he offers congratulations on what he assumes to be their new marriage, but he also offers up a whole host of warnings as well. Sir Percival knows that Jamie is a smuggler, but so is much of the population of Scotland at the moment. Jamie is dealing with contraband dry goods from Holland, cambric, which is a type of fabric, velvet, and similar things, and to much more profit, the liquor trade, because everything is supposed to go through the crown. Jamie's expecting a delivery from France in the next few days. But Sir Percival warns him that the meeting place is already known. But Jamie thinks he already has a backup plan to the backup plan to the backup plan. So it should be fine. And they will be meeting in an alternate location on the cliffs of Arbroath. Before they can go to Arbroath, Claire and young Ian must be dealt with, right? And after they have this lunch and they spend some time alone, having some love time, they notice people running, and there's a fire close by. Well, sure enough, it turns out to be the print shop is on fire. And young Ian is trapped inside to make it worse. So Ian Murray, young Ian's father, and Claire watch from the sidelines, and Jamie goes in heroically and gets young Ian out. Now, Father Ian has to help, and it's pretty dramatic. And welcome back to the 18th century, where all the chaos and adventure you could possibly want with one Jamie Fraser is available. So young Ian is rescued, and both Ian, his father, and Uncle Jamie are incredibly angry, and they want to know what's going on. They take him back to Madame Jones, the brothel, and Ian, his father, is so angry, but young Ian refuses to go home with him to Lallybroch just yet. And he wants to stay at the brothel for the night. Well, his treatment of his father seems really horrible and disrespectful, but when we find out why, it makes more sense. So his father has left in a fury and disappointment, and they've dealt with young Ian, plying him with booze and dealing with his minor injuries. So young Ian gives the explanation after his father leaves. And he talks about the one-eyed seaman that he'd seen and heard in a tavern asking for Jamie by his real name, which no one in Edinburgh should know. Jamie being known as Malcolm the Printer, and Jamie Roy among the smugglers and brandy merchants. He's never seen mixing the two. So young Ian loses the man after following him hilariously through many different taverns while the man is asking for brandy and smelling it and sipping it. He can tell if it comes from a certain place. So young Ian goes back to the print shop and he finds the one-eyed man in the back room, and he's taking some newly printed pamphlets. So he tries to stop the man from getting away. Young Ian sets the shop on fire by turning over the lead forge, and he thinks he's killed the one-eyed man in the process. He can't tell his father that he murdered someone, but he thought maybe his uncle would understand better. Jamie, groping hastily in his sleeve for a handkerchief, looked up suddenly, struck by a thought. "That's why you said you must tell me, but not your da, because you knew I've killed men before?" His nephew nodded, searching Jamie's face with troubled, trusting eyes. I thought you'd know what to do." Ah. Jamie drew a deep breath and exchanged a glance with Claire. "Well." His shoulders braced and broadened, and I could see him accept the burden young Ian had laid down. That's a big deal. Young Ian's, 14, 15 years old? Oof. That's a lot for him to carry, and he didn't want to disappoint his father any more than he already had. So his Uncle Jamie recommends prayer and then go to confession tomorrow. And he also comforts young Ian, reassuring him that if he had no choice, he is not damned as a murderer. It's self-defense. The process of healing continues with supper and bed. But bed, Well, Jamie and Claire were thinking about putting a pallet down for young Ian to sleep at the foot of their bed in their room, but Fergus has a whole nother set of things in mind. He had arranged with Madame Jean that young Ian should not be left to brood alone, that he should go with one of the young women because a woman can make all things better. Jamie is mortified, but he can't prevent young Ian from going with a young prostitute. He resigns himself, and he admits to Claire that the best remedy for the soul sickness of killing is often to be found in a woman's arms. However, Jamie makes sure the next day that young Ian is off to confession first thing. He leaves Claire to reacquaint herself with Edinburgh, and she goes to apothecary's shop for fresh herbs. And while she's there, she meets a free church minister named Archibald Campbell. And he asks her if she can come see his sister, who has strange fits. She appears to be catatonic part of the time. Claire agrees, and she goes to see Miss Margaret Campbell, and she does have fits. She was staring and screaming, or she was sitting, ignoring everyone around. She lived peacefully in the past before the traumatic experience with soldiers after Culloden that deprived her of her wits. She was found after Culloden, and a group of men likely took advantage of her and hurt her and abused her. She was basically left for dead when a family found her before her brother could find her again. Claire cannot do much other than to offer nutritional and supplemental things and sedatives. But she hopes that by going to the Indies with her brother, it may help her condition somewhat if she leaves this place. Her brother was not a Jacobite, nor was her father, but Margaret Campbell was in love with a Jacobite soldier. Claire returns to the brothel, and she finds Jamie and Fergus deep in conversation. The fallback is arranged for the rendezvous with the French smuggling ship. The details are arranged by letter between Jamie and Jared, and the smugglers are only informed just before each rendezvous, so the secret should stay safe. He decides reluctantly to take Claire and young Ian with him because they have to go back to Lallybroch thereafter. But young Ian and Claire are to go nowhere near the actual rendezvous, and they're supposed to remain safely because there's an inn on the road above the beach. Well, when they get there, they find that the inn has been burnt to the ground. There's no safe place for Claire and Ian to be, so he kind of shuffles them off into a place with strict guidelines to stay out of the way. But they can sit and watch things unfold. And what happens after the ship comes into the bay or within reach of the beach, excisemen jump out from everywhere. They're waiting for the smugglers, and Claire and Ian flee to the road. Claire nearly runs into another pair of excisemen, and they were waiting to trap any fleeing smugglers. So this one is apparently designed to trap Jamie Fraser. This was arranged. Claire goes to warn Jamie. He managed to escape. And as the excisemen leave because they couldn't find him, all the smugglers get back together. And then they fade quietly to their homes. And returning along the road, they find one customs officer hanging on a tree. And this is to put Jamie away as a smuggler, treason with the pamphlets by connecting A. Malcolm Printer, and as a murderer. So there is no way he won't go back to prison or be hanged. So somebody is on his tail, and they cannot go back to Edinburgh. And Jamie's not looking forward to going back to Lallybroch either. because he has to get young Ian home, but it's going to be a very bad conversation with his sister and older Ian Murray. Claire wonders how Jenny will take her back. They were once friends. And initially, it was a bit of an awful reception. It wasn't very favorable. And young Ian's behavior had been poor, and his parents were hurt and felt rejected in favor of Uncle Jamie. But Jamie finds a way for both young Ian and himself to make atonement. Oh, and they have to strap each other. They never want that to happen again. Jamie is horrified. But it's decided, because if Jamie loves Ian like a son, he has to treat him like a father would. And that part is completely resolved and put to bed. In the morning, Claire is so happy to be in the place that she's felt was home. That was the only place that felt like home. And she gets up and tends to the fire, and Jamie's still sleeping. And she sees 3 riders in the distance, and it's all women, and she thinks it might be the other Murray girls. And she and Jamie are in a bit of a compromising position, enjoying each other in the morning. And it's very compromising for somebody else to open the door and look upon, with his face, about level with her thighs. And there was an interruption when there was a sudden bang at the door, and it flew open. And they looked very startled. And in the doorway stood a young girl I had never seen before. She was perhaps 15 or 16, with long flaxen hair and big blue eyes. The eyes were somewhat bigger than normal and filled with an expression of horrified shock as she stared at me. Her gaze moved slowly from my tangled hair to my bare breasts and down the slopes of my naked body until it encountered Jamie, lying prone between my thighs, white-faced with a shock equal to hers. "Daddy," she said in tones of total outrage, "who is that woman?" That is one of my favorite scenes in the entirety of Voyager. It is utterly horrifying. Now, Claire had been searching for clues the whole time that there would be a family, a wife, other children, something, and Jamie had said nothing thus far. Now, mind you, it's only been mere days since Claire's been back, and they were doing quite a bit of adventuring, but there had been quiet time that Jamie could have disclosed information to her and the status of what his life was like. Again, you can be very angry at Jamie. I think this was a huge mistake on his part. Similar to when he shot the birds the night that Jenny was in labor and the soldiers came, and that's what prompted him to give himself up for the reward and go to Ardsmuir. This is one of those mistakes. Now, everybody thinks that Jamie Fraser's perfect. He's the king of men. No, he's not perfect. He's woefully flawed. And that's one of the reasons we love him. But he and Claire, they make some really not great decisions. And when they're not together, they can make some decisions that make us shake our head and think, why are you doing that? But together, yeah, they still do. And this is one of his most flawed moments, I think. And like I said, Claire had all those months to prepare and get herself ready for whatever could be. We know Jamie never stopped loving Claire, but it's also been 20 years. Could they trust who each other now was? Could Claire trust the man he turned into in 20 years? She only spent a handful of years with him prior. Are they who the other can be with? Are they trustworthy? Are they the same? Are they worthy of each other's love and honoring and loyalty? Lots of questions So now Claire is freaking out. And this young woman is named Marsali. She's the daughter of Leary. And Claire is equally as horrified as Marsali is. And Leary is not far behind. The door is slammed. Jamie goes down to deal with it, and Claire is left to rage. Simply rage. And wonder what is going on. Now, Jamie could have avoided all of this. Or would Claire have turned around and left? Would she have left Edinburgh and gone back to the Stones? We don't know. She can do things rashly. But this is a pretty big deal. And of all the women that Jamie could marry in all of Scotland, Leary, the one who tried to murder Claire or to have her murdered at the witch trial, that's a big deal. Now, I know in the TV show, Jamie knows that Leary was behind it and had done the ill wish and had participated in the witch trial and that she was behind that. So I don't know how that's going to be reconciled in the book, because I don't believe Jamie would ever have married Leary, book Jamie, if he would have known what she did to Claire. Because Claire never told him in the book. Nobody ever told him. So, which I find that wouldn't have happened either, because Claire told him everything. However, in the TV show, that plot point was completely altered. So how do you think that Jamie will come to marry Leary? Will there be some kind of confession on Leary's part and her heart just bursting and saying how sorry she was that she did that and she was a stupid teenager? Name your words. I'm not sure. I can't imagine how that is going to be reconciled. So he, who loves Claire with every fiber of his being, never let her go, was always with him. How that is going to make any difference. How they're going to make it all work in the TV show. The only way that I've come up with in my head, yes, I know. I do other things. I don't simply worry about Outlander. Is that there could be a storyline where after he returns from his parole in Hellwater, when he gets back, they are still very poverty-stricken, and now Leary has been again widowed. So this is twice widowed, and now she has 2 daughters, and she has no hope of survival. And she's going to have to lose her property. She's going to have to move in and be sort of indentured under another family, something like that. She's going to lose her position. She's going to lose her property because she's now been widowed, and that she will not be in any good position to take care of her daughters. That is the only scenario I can come up with, unless Jamie gets amnesia, which is possible, I guess. He has been hit on the head enough. It could be like TV shows, soap operas, where people get amnesia and they don't remember things for years and years and years. Hey, that is available. But Jamie, being someone who protects and cares for people, that's the only way I think that they can do it. I cannot come up with another plot device or another storyline that would in any way seem reasonable. So let me know what you think. Remember, you can email at contact@adramaofoutlander.com or leave a voicemail on the listener line at 719-425-9444. So at this point, Leary is claiming that Jamie's hers. They were married. They lived together for a very short time period, under a year, and Jamie moved away and went to Edinburgh. And he sends money back, and he rarely visits. Now, Jamie had to know that at Lallybroch, news would travel by some form and get to Leary. This is ridiculous for him not to tell Claire. I mean, he must have been putting his fingers in his ears and thinking, la, 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 I can make it go away. No, Jamie, you couldn't make it go away. So Jamie makes Claire stay and listen, and they have this terrible row. And this was after Leary is yelling that Claire is a witch and all these terrible things. I mean, the house is disturbed at this point. I mean, the row that Claire and Jamie have is probably one of the most uncomfortable moments in all the books between them for me. But the background and history of my family, having somebody physically fight that way, causes me to want to run away and scream. Like, I can't deal with it. I would never do that because I'd be afraid of how much damage I would do to somebody else and that I would not be able to control myself. So that's the kind of row that they have, and it's a knockdown, drag out. So Jamie claims he didn't tell Claire because he was afraid her reaction would just be this. It's bad. So Jamie stomps off after Jenny makes them break apart, and she helps Claire get herself dressed and back together, and Jamie is who knows where at this point. So Claire leaves. She says, I'm leaving. There's nothing for her here. Jamie is married. He's not the man she thought he was. And they'd already been intimate a few times. And everything seemed good, but it wasn't. As she says, she had known those few days of perfect joy. And here's an excerpt from the book. Only with Jamie had I given everything I had, risked it all. I had thrown away caution and judgment and wisdom, along with the comforts and constraints of a hard-won career. I had brought him nothing but myself, been nothing but myself with him, given him soul as well as body, let him see me naked, trusted him to see me whole and cherish my frailties, because he once had. I had feared he couldn't again, or wouldn't. And then had known those few days of perfect joy, thinking that what had once been true was true once more. I was free to love him with everything I had and was, and he loved with an honesty that matched my own. And beloved with an honesty that matched my own. The tears slid hot and wet between my fingers. I mourned for Jamie and for what I had been with him. And she could hear his voice. Do you know, his voice said, whispering, what it means to say again, I love you, and to mean it? She did know. She knew with her head in her hands beneath the pine trees, and she knew she would never mean it again. So she is ridden off. She's going back to the Stones. That's what's in her mind to do. She is devastated and broken. There's nothing for her here that she can see. And for those few days, she thought she had grabbed that brass ring and gotten it back. But in her mind right now, it was all a lie. He was all a lie. And it was gone. And she wouldn't be a mistress. And she couldn't be a mistress. She couldn't come in between him and Leary, regardless of what their marriage looked like. He was married. And throughout the first book, there's such this worry in Claire's mind about Frank cheating. And he thought she was cheating during the war because of the apparition of the Highlander he saw. And when she went back through the stones to Frank when she was pregnant, she thought he was cheating the whole time. So for some reason, this is a really, really sore spot for Claire. I mean, above and beyond what most of us would feel. Like this is a preoccupation for her almost. And so for Claire, she can't be a mistress. She can't fill that role. And so she's sitting under this tree. She's unable to move. She can't write anymore. And she's devastated to her core. And all of a sudden, young Ian appears. He says that Jamie sent him to have Claire come back to Lallybroch. And this causes Claire to be even more angry because she thought that meant that Jamie just didn't really care enough and he only sent Ian as his errand boy. And she refuses, and she tries to get away from young Ian and get her reins back so she can ride away. And young Ian is trying so hard, and he's imploring her, please come. It's not what she thinks. Jamie needs you. Let go. But Auntie Claire, it's not that. What's not that? Uncle Jamie didn't stay to tend Leary. Then why did he send you? She shot him. He sent me to find you because he's dying. And then Claire thinks, if he isn't dying when I get there, I'll kill him myself. And you too, Ian Murray. And young Ian is a good tracker already. And he knew probably what path she would take after his Uncle Jamie told him where she's probably going. So they head back to Lallybroch. And this does not soften her temperament very much, let me tell you. And when they get back, because she was gone for a day and a half or so, and right after she left is when Leary shot Jamie. That's why he didn't follow her. So Jamie has a terrible infection, a very high fever. He is in and out of consciousness with pain. And he thinks that she's an hallucination. And he's willing to die at this point. He's been almost dead a couple of times before, and this time he's ready. So, Claire, if you remember, happened to pack some of the wee spikies, the syringes, and penicillin. Yes, she did. So she's going to inject him with penicillin and doesn't believe that 18th century germs are any match for a modern antibiotic. That's true, but I'm really, really glad Claire didn't bring a whole bunch more penicillin or figure out how to manufacture it, because we're having so much resistance to antibiotics now in a very short time period. Imagine if somebody had introduced them in the 18th century. It would be so much worse. We're already trying to find out different ways of handling infections because antibiotics are not working. And not only are they not working properly, new germs are emerging that are these super germs because they're a living organism. And they have a biological imperative to reproduce and to survive. So we're creating stronger germs because of antibiotics. It's a bad thing that's going on right now. So she tends to his wounds. She gives him the injections, and he hates being stuck. And now he sits and tells her, or now she sits, and he tells her the story behind his marriage to Leary. Again, it's going to be different in the TV show because the secret is already out that Leary was behind the witch trial. He explains that it was a marriage made of loneliness and it was a mismatch born of hope and compassion. Jenny kept pressing him to get married. He was a shell of himself. He was never okay when he came home from Hellwater, and he is a man who should not sleep alone, as Jenny says. And he had kept refusing over and over all the women that Jenny brought to him. And he says because nobody could replace Claire, but because his circumstances were not worthy of taking a wife. He was living in a cave, he was hiding, he was on the run. And what sort of life would that be? And then after his exile, though he was free of the threat of the law, he was still rootless and felt a stranger in his own land. So he really didn't have anything to do. He was no longer running the estate and taking care of the families. William, who Claire doesn't know about, was lost forever to Jamie. He had nothing to hold him, and he felt like a ghost. And so the last time that Jenny, pushed the possibility of marriage onto him, he listened. He missed being in a relationship and being touched and to have that companionship with someone. And Leary was a widow and she had 2 daughters to support. And she was one of the few things that linked him to his youth. So it was nostalgia on top of it. They married, but there was no love. But he thought they might be able to help each other. Now, I think for the first time I've kind of connected this relationship, or part of the aspects of Jamie entering this relationship, with how many of us see Claire and Frank's marriage after she returns pregnant with Brianna. Though they had a love for each other, that's not what their marriage was about, because Claire was clearly still in love with Jamie. She could never let him go, though she never talked about him. Jamie was a ghost in their marriage. Claire was a ghost in Jamie's marriage to Leary. And though Frank still loved Claire, I really think the hope was that they could at least be a help to each other. And they were. I never noticed that parallel until right this second. I wonder if that will play on screen at all in the TV show. But right away, Jamie knew that this was an incredible mismatch. They couldn't come for each other, and there was only misunderstanding and misery. And within a year, Jamie left. And he sent money back. Claire is moved to understanding because she had a marriage of obligation. And she knows the pitfalls of a bond without love. She had a love for Frank, but she wasn't in love with him. She didn't have that passion. She didn't love him in the same way. And I do think marriages of obligation and strictly companionship and to be a help to each other, they can be very successful. But that's what both people have to want. That has to be the foundation of why they get married. One cannot be hopelessly in love with the other or think they are, and the other not. And he says to her, do you know what it's like to be with someone that way? To try all you can and seem never to have the secret of them. Claire did know. And he says, I thought perhaps you did. And then to have it back again, that knowing, to be free in all you say or do and know that it is right, to say I love you and mean it with all your heart. To say I love you and mean it with all your heart, she said back to him. To say that. So they are bonding over his injury. He can't move. And Claire is sitting in there. She can't really go anywhere. And outside the room where they are, the household is bustling and she's getting mad side-eye and people aren't talking to her when she does leave to eat or bathe. And I love in the excerpt, it says, I found myself curled against him, my head just fitting in the hollow of his shoulder, and she had no idea how it happened. It was one of those instinctive things where she just crawled up next to him. And then he says, for so many years, for so long, I've been so many things, so many different men. I was uncle to Jenny's children and brother to her and Ian, my lord to Fergus and sir to my tenants, MacDu to the men of Ardsmuir and Mackenzie to the other servants at Hellwater, Malcolm the printer, then and Jamie Roy at the docks. But here in the dark with you, I have no name. That, my friends, that is what we all want right there. Here in the dark with you, I have no name. Claire was saying that she could just be, and she wasn't simply talking about physical nakedness. She was talking about spiritual, emotional, physical, like her whole being. She could be naked in front of him without judgment, without fear, with only acceptance and love. That's all her flaws on display. That is everything. And she felt that she could be it with Jamie, with no excuses, no apologies, no worries. She could just be and know that she would be loved and she would be liked and she would be understood and cared for. And Jamie is saying the exact same thing back to Claire. She's the only person, the only place that this exists for him. And she breathed him in. And she said, I love you. And she meant it. Wow, that is powerful. Jamie recovers, and then they meet a lawyer, Anne Leary's brother Hobart. They have to go through all this rigmarole, even though the lawyer is one of our favorite people, Ned Gowan, and he and Claire have this buddy romance going on, which is so cute. But he's representing Leary and her interests. And in the end, they get it all haggled out, and Jamie has to pay Leary an annual sum for maintenance of her household and to provide dowries for her two daughters, Marsali and Joan. So this sounds great, but Jamie has no money. But there is a way. Do you remember way back when he escaped from Ardsmuir and he found those gems on Seal Island? Well, he didn't dump them in the sea. He left them there. And the Murray Fraser household of Lallybroch had been occasionally using a gem at a time to fund the operations of the estate, to send money to others in need. So they were there. Well, the two oldest boys had swum out before to gather a gem or two. Ian Murray, of course, with his leg being partially amputated, he couldn't do it. So finally it was decided that young Ian would swim out to the Seal's Isle and he would get a single gem and bring it back. And they would sell it secretly in France. Jamie would have the money to pay off his obligation, so on and so forth, right? It didn't really turn out that well. They got there. Young Ian went to go swim out to the island after much direction, and then a ship appears. And they see young Ian getting dragged off of Seal Island onto the ship, along with the box of treasure. Okay, so Jamie's now in another world of hurt. Not only does he owe Leary money, and he put everybody in the hot seat, he almost died, and we find out that Jenny is the one who is mad at Claire because she thinks he's going to take Jamie away. That's why she told Larry to come to the house. This is just a mess, right? Now they've lost young Ian. How are you going to tell your sister and brother-in-law that you lost their child to a bunch of, I don't know, pirates or something on a ship while trying to retrieve the one gem? That sounds like something terrible. I wouldn't want to do that. Claire and Jamie decide that they are going to recover young Ian, and they go across the channel as they'd originally planned to get Jared's help. Remember Jared, who runs the wine business in France? Yes. They get there, they figure out by the description that Jamie remembered of the ship and the seamen and the direction it was going, what ship it was. And it's called the Bruja. So Jared generously loads the ship up, even though it's toward the end of the season and it's getting really dangerous to travel between Europe and the Indies and the Caribbean. He gives them a ship and things that they can sell when they get there. And they can use the ship as they need to look for young Ian before they reload and head back to Europe. And if they lost the ship for some reason, Jared is wealthy and it's not insurmountable for him to overcome it. So they ended up getting enough people. We know he's going to be terribly seasick, poor guy. And among the smugglers that he puts on the ship are Duncan Innes, keep him in mind, Mr. Willoughby, and a bunch of other men. Now, there's been some odd things going on, and it seems that somebody's been trying to kill Jamie, on top of them outing his names. Maybe he needs to make some better choices in life. I don't know. I would much rather live with somebody like Ian Murray. Stable. Thanks very much. Maybe not so flashy and awesome. Maybe not the king of men, but it's okay. I'll take a Prince of Men or Duke of Men. I'm okay with that. So Fergus has gone to run an errand prior to the ship sailing. And he had made some remarks earlier about this young woman that he was in love with, but because of his history and having no family or name, education, what have you, he was born in a brothel, that he's unacceptable to this woman's family. So what does he do? He goes, runs an errand, and he gets the young woman, and at the very last minute, brings her back to the ship that's already leaving the dock. And it happens to be Leary's daughter, Marsali, of all people. Now, Fergus is about 30 at this point. Do you think this is going to put Claire and Jamie into any better light with the people at Lallybroch? And they owe Leary a crap ton of money. I cannot wait to see this play out. We've already seen the actors. They're amazing already. You can tell that they're going to be fantastic in this role. So Marsali says she wants to marry him. And they've already been handfast. And Fergus wants to marry her, but Jamie has declared that they cannot sleep together. There will be no fornication. There will be no sexual relations before they are formally married by a priest. And that will get them all the way to the West Indies. There should be a priest there. That was a bad idea because we're talking 3 months. Maybe 2-3 months that Jamie and Claire are not going to be in the same cabin together with no privacy on a small ship. Okay. That probably wasn't so smart of Jamie. And to boot, Marsali hates Claire. Hates her, thinks she's a whore. I mean, think about what Leary has to been saying. And Marsali loves her mother. And you can say a lot of things about Leary, but she loves her daughters. She may not be a good wife. She may not be a good friend. She may be a mean girl and really immature, but she was a really good mother to her daughters, and she loved them fiercely. Oh, a mess not of their making. Fergus and Marcelie kind of find some little make-out time and googly eye time holding hands, but otherwise they abide by what Jamie said. Which is a good thing, because Jamie is so sick with seasickness that he seems like he could be the one person that might die from it. And they try everything. Nothing that Claire throws at him, nothing that the ship's cook, who I love to no end, they're not able to do anything. I mean, Murphy is sure he can create something that makes Jamie better, and he cannot hold anything down. So finally, Claire learns about the acupuncture needles that Willoughby has been trying to, or Chi Chen has been trying to get Jamie to use. So between the two of them, they finally get him to agree. And he has needles sticking all over him, and he's able to come back on deck. I can't wait to see that too. I've done acupuncture. I love it. I find it very relaxing. I've used it for a few things. So I think it's brilliant we get to see this part. And we get to experience some Chinese medicine. Along the way, Mr. Willoughby acquires a pelican that he names Ping An, the peaceful one. And Ping An fishes for Willoughby. He trained him, and he'll go get fish and bring it back aboard for them to share. He always has his food. He writes poems. And then they come across an English man of war called the Porpoise. This is not cool. There's a lot of sick men. They have typhoid. That's what Claire thinks they have. And she's immune, or believes she is, so she's immune. And so she goes over there to check them out. But Jamie can't go with her because he could get sick and die. So the Porpoise takes off with Claire. And Jamie is furious. But the Porpoise's young captain has to get his delivery to Jamaica on time. He has to. And with the epidemic on board, half his crew is dead or falling sick. Thomas Leonard becomes the captain, and he has to take her. So it's pretty bad. Claire goes on for a few hours thinking that she's going to set up a triage and get the whole line going, but then they leave with her and she can't get back. So she's trying to figure out how to deal with all these sick people and get off this ship at the same time. It's terrible. All she has on board is distilled alcohol and hygiene. So she does her very best, but people are dying and becoming ill every day. She certainly saved some people, but she feels like it's futile and she's at her wit's end. And she meets somebody, Lord John Grey. She doesn't know who it is, though. But he's the new governor of Jamaica. She doesn't know this either. But they have this wonderful conversation. And he's forced to go back to his cabin so he doesn't get ill. So the epidemic runs its course, and the Porpoise is heading toward Jamaica. And she finds herself in the cabin of the captain, and she sees a terrible log entry. A Harry Tompkins, the one-eyed seaman who young Ian thought he killed, is on board. And their real names are in the captain's log because of Harry Tompkins. So Claire hunts him down and basically threatens him. And she gets the truth from him. Yep, Jamie's names are known by Sir Percival Turner, who we heard about before, and to Captain Leonard. So as soon as they get to port, Jamie's going to be arrested. Claire can't have that happen, can she? So she decides she has to escape. She tries to get off at various stops, but she keeps being foiled. So the gunner's wife, who is fabulous, Annika, she tends to the goats. She helps Claire get off. Claire has a harrowing trip into shore, but she gets there. And she is beat up and bashed, and there's a storm coming. She hopes that she can reach Jamaica in time to meet the Artemis and to warn Jamie. She doesn't even know what to do. She has to find water and food. And she runs into a Jewish naturalist named Lawrence Stern. Yes, that Lawrence Stern. He shows up everywhere. He must be the only Jewish naturalist ever in that time period. She was looking at the multi-eyed fish, and she thought she was hallucinating. He gives her food and water and takes her to a nearby friend's home, who happens to be a defrocked and a little bit off-kilter priest named Father Fogden. Yes. And she has a whole set of experiences at Father Fogden's house. The Artemis finally catches up with the man of war, and they hide out of sight. And Jamie boards the porpoise unseen to search for Claire, but she's not there. So he is stuck on this ship, okay? But he's discovered, and he's imprisoned on the ship. And he's told that Claire is dead because she was lost overboard. Ugh. But the gunner's wife notices him, and she liberates him because she knows that he's Claire's husband. And she pushes him basically off the boat or off the man of war and says, "She is not dead. She go there. You go too. Find her." And she picks him up and throws him overboard. Oh, Annika. So he gets on Hispaniola just like Claire. And he has to frantically swim. And it's awful. And when he gets on land, a group of children playing near the shore take him to their mother's tavern. Of course, it's next door to the military garrison. And there is a terrible storm, and all these things happen. And the Artemis ends up being put on land. While this is going on for Jamie, Claire is enjoying the hospitality of Father Fogden, sort of. She's learning about hidden caves and escaped slaves, the maroons, the blind fish, dead sheep, and all of these things. And he has a really grumpy housekeeper / cook who was the mother of the woman who Father Fogden lost his priesthood over, but she has since passed. So then Claire finds out that there's a one-handed man captaining a ship, and it has to be the Artemis, right? So it was shipwrecked, and Claire is reunited with Fergus and Marsali and the other people, but then she realizes Jamie's not with them, and now she starts to panic. So while repairs are being made to the Artemis, visit from troops are there. Turns out that they're under the command of one Captain Alessandro, a tall soldier with a red beard and remarkably familiar aspect. So Jamie decided to use his French and pretend to be a captain. And he got the soldiers to come and help. they did, but Jamie and Fergus and the others outwitted them because they thought they would get the ship, right? And once it was repaired, it got safely afloat, and they were all together except for young Ian. Well, now they're in Hispaniola, and Marsali wants Jamie to keep his promise. And she knows that Father Fogden is a priest. He must keep his word and allow her and Fergus to be married. So he reluctantly agrees. And he says that he's told Marsali she has to write to her mother and say she's wed. And that he suggested she doesn't say anything else about it. Leary was going to be quite upset at hearing that her eldest daughter had eloped with a one-handed ex-pickpocket twice her age. And that the marriage was performed in the middle of the night on a West Indian beach by a disgraced, if not actually defrocked, priest. It was witnessed by 25 seamen, 10 French horses, a small flock of sheep, and all gaily beribboned in honor of the occasion, and a King Charles spaniel, who added to the general festive feeling by attempting to copulate with Murphy's wooden leg at every opportunity. The only thing that could make things worse, in Leary's view, would be to hear that Claire had participated in the ceremony. So she decided not to. Claire understands. Since the captain of the Artemis was dead in the shipwreck, along with some other sailors, Jamie takes command so that they can continue their search for young Ian. He also inquires with the network of Scottish Freemasons on the islands. And Fergus acquires a profitable cargo of bat guano to be sold, because Jamie said half the profits could go for Marsali's dowry. So it was money. And they need money to start their marriage off. Yuck. They head towards Jamaica. Okay, on their way to Jamaica, they're boarded by pirates. This just gets worse and worse, right? Claire and Marsali have to take refuge in the hold, but they are surprised. And Claire attacks the pirate with a blade from her surgical kit, cutting off one of his toes and allowing Marsali to escape. So Claire gets out back onto the ship, and she starts climbing. And he's climbing behind her, and she ends up getting very injured in the process. But Ping An helped, because he didn't like Portuguese pirates either. The bird helped Claire out, and when she got down to the bottom, we see how injured she was. She needed stitches all up her entire arm. And this is where Jamie freaks out, because he realizes that she's the one who's bleeding, not him. "It's no my blood, Sassenach. It's yours." So she almost bleeds to death from the cutlass slash down her arm. And she's doctored by Jamie and Willoughby. Well, Willoughby ends up suturing her up. He knows how to do this. Jamie couldn't quite get the handle on it. So that's what Willoughby did. And then they gave her some of the penicillin because she did have a fever. We have no idea what was on that saber. Jamie stayed close to her, and she had horrible dreams, and she was very sick. But she recovers. And this is where one of the most prized scenes that we can't wait to see is turtle soup. Jamie brings Claire drunken turtle soup that Murphy makes. It has so much sherry in it. And she ends up still fevered, but she's starting to feel better. And she ends up being quite inebriated between the soup and the fever, and advances on Jamie and they have a good old time. And that's when her fever breaks. And she feels so much better. He puts her back to bed and then goes back to work. Claire goes to help Jamie as she's feeling a little bit better, though still quite weak. And it's to help an escaped slave and put some salve on him. But there's something unusual about this man. And we get the link between the Bruja and the seal's treasure and this man. And they start putting pieces together of what is what. So Claire, Marsali, Fergus, Murphy, they get off the ship and they're going through town. They're looking for young Ian, and they come across a slave market. And this man has tribal scars on his face, the scars of slavery on his back, and a brand on his shoulder. This is Ishmael. He was a cook, and something more than a cook from his bearing. So it turns out that Claire cannot stand seeing this man naked and fondled and being sold, and she ends up having to buy him. So Claire's a slave owner, much to her absolute horror. But Jamie said, what else are they going to do? And his name is Temeraire. And he had come from a Mrs. Abernathy of Rose Hall in Jamaica. And so this puzzle piece will lead them to young Ian. This is where we're going to stop part 2. Otherwise, it will be another hour of podcast. So they've made the harrowing journey. There were shipwrecks and storms. They both had to get to Hispaniola. They met Father Fogden, and we get to meet all those sheep. But they reunite. Fergus and Marsali are married. Everybody's happy. And they think they have a lead on young Ian. So much has happened. And at some point, Claire and Marsali have to make some kind of movement forward, right? And Claire feels for Larry, never probably seeing her daughter again. There's so much involved, and Claire does have a big heart. And she never had intention of hurting Larry, hence her never telling Jamie that Larry was responsible for trying to kill her way back when. And then we get to revisit coming up Lord John Grey when we find out who he really was on the Porpoise, because Claire didn't know. A lot of movement. So what do you think is going to make the show specifically? Are we going to see the escaped slave and Temeraire, who Claire had to buy? She didn't mean to buy him. But there was such a huge outrage and melee that happened that Jamie had no choice but to buy him. And Claire was the owner. I mean, she's in a fit. I cannot imagine owning somebody else. It would be no, it just couldn't happen. But Claire had to, and she had to figure out what to do with them. So what pieces do you think we're going to see on the show? I mean, we know they did all the sea scenes, and they used the Black Sails ships in South Africa to be the Caribbean. It'll be really interesting. I can't wait to see Marsali and Fergus's wedding. It sounds like a great time. The turtle soup episode. Oh, Daddy, who is that woman? Come on, that's going to be one of the top scenes besides the printer shop. And to see Larry shooting him, I mean, it's going to be fabulous. Come on. And we really get to know young Ian and get to fall in love with him, I hope. It seems like the actor who's playing him is on board. Like, it looks fabulous, the casting, as it always has been. So I'd love to hear your feedback and what you're thinking will make the cut and what might not, and what they might streamline and change around a bit. Like, will we see the shark scene where they end up having shark fin soup that Murphy's super excited about? How much of that will we see? I mean, we get 13 episodes, which is a lot, but this is a big book. So you can email contact@adramavoutlander.com, call into the voice line at 719-425-9444 and leave a voicemail. I want your feedback. I want your questions, your thoughts. Tell me where I'm on the right track, where you think I'm not on the right track. I want you to participate with me. It makes it more fun. And again, I want to thank you for listening, because without you all, I wouldn't be doing this. And I want to give a special shout out to Kathy Green, who pledged a monthly support on Patreon. Thank you so much. And if you want to know how to support the podcast, first and foremost, share the podcast with others. If you see me post on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, hey, retweet it, share it, post it other places so other people can find the podcast too and listen, so we can grow it together. Please interact with each other on the Facebook page. Join the Facebook group. It's a closed group that you have to ask to join. It's for more intimate conversation than the big group, because it's giant now, with closing in on 18,000 people on the big page. Come on Wednesday nights to the Twitter chat. It's under hashtag ADOO. It's at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And we chat about the prior week's episode or any news that has come out. It's fabulous. And you don't have to know how to use Twitter. You just can go on and you type in # or hashtag ADOO and then click on it or search on it, and you'll be able to see all the tweets. Super simple. Go to the website. There are the podcasts from the very beginning. This is podcast, 98? We're almost at 100, which is super exciting. It's a big milestone. But they're all there. If you've missed some, you can go back and listen. You can also find me on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play under A Dram of Outlander. And please leave reviews. That helps people find me. That's a way you can help me, and it costs you nothing but a couple of minutes. And of course, if you want to help financially support the podcast, it's patreon.com/adramofOutlander. If you want to do a monthly offering or to do a one-time offering, just contact me through the email or voicemail, and I will advise you what to do. So I thank you for listening and joining in this process with me. I'm so excited for season 3, and the PR machine has been going and going, and it's amazing. All the videos and clips and articles that are coming out and photographs. It looks like it's going to be so amazing. And be on the lookout for Outlander Science Club to start back up as soon as the series starts. Lots of material in Voyager. And though we covered the aspects of the book, Karen Doherty and I, who is Outlander Medicine, we know things are going to be slightly different in the TV show, and we will cover those as they come up on the show. And just so you know, the podcast episodes are released on Mondays now, because the show is going to air on Sunday night. So I don't want to wait until the following Saturday to put it out. That's a long, long time. So thank you so much for listening. And until next time, slán je va.